What's up, guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Nope, I'm not doing that. And now that's the first impression of my voice that a lot of you probably have. That's awesome. That's a good choice that I made, I think. Yay. Anyway, what is up, guys? Welcome to my YouTube channel. Um, I am June or Juniper or Junebug or whatever you want to call me. That's cool. Um, this is an unedited photograph of me standing in my room right now. I'm just standing very still and not opening my mouth very much when I talk. I've wanted to do YouTube video essays for a while, and now I have the time and the resources and the what else am I doing really right now to be able to do that. And so, well, my favorite YouTube essayist, Big Joel, stated in one video that the job description of a video essayist is to tell the audience a story about a story. And that is more or less what I intend to do for you guys today. Specifically, what I want to talk to you about is the film Little Miss Sunshine. Now, if you haven't seen that movie, you may want to watch it before you watch this video essay, but I have been there with you, those of you who are going to watch this with no intent of watching the movie before and potentially no intent of watching it after. I'm hoping by the end, maybe I'll have done an adequate job convincing you that watching the movie is a good idea, but maybe not. Just know that there are spoilers ahead. So if you'd rather watch the movie before you watch the video essay, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. This story begins as so many other half-scripted, unhinged ramblings that I make do, with me talking to one of my close friends, specifically my best friend River, here depicted by an unedited image of him because he's literally Jake Gyllenhaal. I just realized I mispronounced that. It's Gyllenhaal. I know that it's Gyllenhaal. Please don't make fun of me. So, for reasons that I'm not really going to get into because that's a whole can of worms and this isn't really that kind of channel, your girl was going through it at the time. I was upset and depressed and etc. Fill that in however you want. And so we were River was recommending me movies, and I was kind of watching like a movie a day to distract myself for about a week. And one of the ones he recommended was Little Miss Sunshine, which I had actually heard of before because one of my previous partners had mentioned it like a year ago. And also, I happen to be a pretty big fan of Paul Dano. So yeah, I'd heard of it before, and I'd actually wanted to watch it before, but I am terrible at remembering to watch things that I really want to watch. I just had a vague idea of what it was. I specifically knew about Paul Dano's character because I just think Paul Dano's cool. He's a chill guy. I like that guy. I specifically knew that he played a character who was a teenager who was taking a vow of silence until he became a fighter pilot, Air Force fighter pilot, because he subscribed to the theories of Niche. He was a self-identifying nihilist, which I thought was interesting and a funny idea for a character. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the video. So the night before I watched the movie, River and I ended up talking about nihilism and Niche, this freak with the dead rat mustache on his face, who's the originator of those ideas. And we talked specifically about the Ubermensch idea, which I which is the only real part of Nietzsche's philosophy that I personally take umbrage with, because I think it's the only inconsistent part of his ideas. I disagree with a lot of his ideas, but I have always been someone who, I think if someone earnestly believes something and has like a functioning, self contained set of morals, then that necessitates at least a tiny bit of respect, provided those ideals aren't, inherently built on the harming of other people. And the idea of the Übermensch is really one of the most cynically idealistic things I've ever heard, and just sort of an inherent contradiction to the ideas of nihilism that Friedrich Nietzsche spoke about otherwise. And all of that is really only to tell you that I had ideas of philosophy and contradictions in philosophy and how different philosophies compared to each other before I watched the movie. That was fresh in my mind because I'd been speaking about it only the day before. And I think really that frame of reference and that kind of thinking being fresh is what led me to the analysis of the movie that I'll be sharing later during the movie. And it's important also to note that this movie makes me feel deeply emotional in various ways. And so talking about it in a objective sense feels like it's going to be difficult, but I think I kind of need to just power through it and give you, a summary of the movie if you haven't seen it recently, or if you're naughty and evil and wicked and you ignored me when I said that you should watch the movie first. If you need to, I'll give you my friend TJ's Hulu login, which I have. That's how I watched it. That's a joke. I'm sorry, TJ. I know you're watching this. I would never give out your Hulu login to other people. I'd never do that. Check the video description for my friend TJ's Hulu log. Anyway, like I was saying, it's going to be difficult for me to give you an objective run through of the plot of this movie. So I'm going to call in my good friend January and see if it can do a better job at describing this movie without crying very loudly. Hello, chat. I am January, and I'm going to be objectively describing the plot of Little Miss Sunshine for you today. The plot centers around the Hoover family, consisting of Cheryl Hoover and Richard Hoover, a aspiring motivational speaker and life coach. I got that from Wikipedia. We're reading the Wikipedia description for you. Hold on, I'll spice it up a bit. Sorry about that. Also living with the family is Richard's father, Edwin, who is a heroin addict and unabashed hedonist, who is coaching their youngest child, Olive, to become a beauty queen. There is also Dwayne Hoover, the Paul Dano played son, who is obsessed with Niche and is attempting to become a fighter pilot for the Air Force. Also joining the family and rounding out the cast is Steve Carell as Frank, Cheryl's brother, a gay scholar of the philosopher Proust, after a suicide attempt due to a just absurd pileup of bad things happening to him in his personal life. The family is all together, and they receive word that Olive has qualified for the Little Miss Sunshine beauty contest in Albuquerque. They all pile together into a Volkswagen because they can't afford to fly, and they prepare to go on an absurdly long road trip so that she can perform in the beauty contest and hopefully win, thanks to her insane heroin-addicted grandfather's choreography. The majority of the film is spent on the road trip, in which each of them encounter various personal setbacks. Also from Wikipedia, we're reading Wikipedia again. I have to tell you that or H bomber guy will take this channel down. That's a fun fact. Richard's business deal falls through, shattering his beliefs in his own personal ethical system because it falls apart the second he has to recognize himself as a failure. Um, Frank meets his ex-boyfriend and his ex-boyfriend's current boyfriend, and he'd been doing a little better up to that point, and that makes him do a little worse. Grandpa dies from a heroin overdose in a hotel, so there's that. They end up taking his corpse from the hospital and holding it in the trunk for a fair duration of this movie. Oh yeah, Dwayne realizes he's colorblind, and they don't let colorblind people fly jets for the Air Force. So he kind of freaks out. He has a top 10 realistic depictions of a panic attack in the back of the Volkswagen. He freaks out, breaks his vow of silence, starts screaming at everyone, but Olive ends up calming him down, and he joins up with the family again, which is nice. They make it to the competition, although not without reaching it very late and having to talk the officials into letting Olive compete. She goes back to prepare. The other girls perform, and Richard and Dwayne realize that there's some beauty standards in the 11-year-old beauty pageant world, and that Olive isn't going to probably do very well. And so they attempt to, warn her and prevent her from humiliating herself. But Cheryl says, let Olive be Olive, and she goes up to perform. So she performs, and it turns out that her performance is a burlesque striptease to Super Freak. So that's what happens when you let a heroin-addicted octogenarian write your child daughter's performance for a beauty pageant, apparently. Everyone watching it is kind of understandably horrified, and they start yelling at her, and then in a incredibly sweet moment, that was subjective. That was subjective. They're going to tase me. In a moment you may or may not find sweet, the rest of the family goes up on stage and begins to dance with her, and they are all detained by the hotel security, which is funny. And then they are released with the stipulation that Olive never performs in a beauty pageant in California again. They smash their van through the toll booth and drive away into the sunset. And it may or may not be beautiful depending on your personal sensibilities. Thanks, January. That was really great. Okay, now I get to be subjective again. Yay! This is the main cast with the exception of the grandpa, because at that point he's been killed and murdered by heroin. I'm going to talk about my personal theory about the movie now and what it's attempting to tell people. So buckle up, sunshine. Get ready for me yapping a lot, which we've already had like 15 minutes of. So that'll be awesome. In my personal opinion, I think each of the main characters represents a different sort of philosophical stance. And the film really seems to be attempting to make a case for optimism as the best way to look at the world through Olive. Now, I'm going to talk in a bit more depth about each individual character and what their outlooks say about them, philosophy as a whole, and the whole world and all the people in it, or something less dumb and cheesy. Let's start with Richard. That's an easy enough place to start. Um, he sort of represents the social Darwinist, which is interesting given that he's a motivational speaker, which is generally seen as a sort of feel good way of looking at the world, but his is certainly not. He is convinced that there are two types of people in the world: failures and successful people. And he hates failures. He hates them a lot, which is interesting and ironic given what a failure he is in his personal life. He discourages Olive from eating ice cream. He's going to give that 11-year-old an eating disorder. I swear to God. There's a very sweet moment where the rest of the family convinces Olive to eat the ice cream when Richard is telling her not to. And it's sweet. It's a beautiful moment, but the whole time my fists are shaking, my arms are sweaty, mom's spaghetti, there's vomit on my sweater already, because I hate this man. And to talk specifically about how much I hate this man, because it would contrast with my sweet, demure personality. We have July. We have my friend July. We have my good friend July here to talk to you now. I hate this man a lot. I really, really hate this man. I understand that he's redeemed by the film. I know this. I understand this. I think it's done very well. I think it's an exceptionally well-written redemption arc. However, even though I don't hate him after that point, the hatred I feel for him up to that point is so great that it kind of outweighs the affection that I have for him as a character afterwards. You need to understand that I really, really, really hate this guy. I hate him a lot. I want him dead. I would go to his house. I think that's enough of that. The film shows, however, that his personal way of looking at the world, where there are failures and people who succeed, is incorrect by, well, his business deal falls apart, and despite everything he does to try to get it to work out, he cannot get it to work out. And he's sort of forced to grapple with the idea that his worldview is not really correct, because he can fail despite doing literally everything within his power to succeed. And his ideology sort of circulates the idea that failure and success are choices that a person makes, two options, like that meme with the Disneyland castle and the evil castle. Failure or succeed. It's a choice you make turning on a path somewhere. And so, in a recurring theme, the randomness and cruelty of the world, exhibited in the fact that he truly believed he would succeed and had even been assured that he would, and then failed regardless, is underscored by a strange sort of hope. Because once he realizes that the world is that way, he's able to function more like a human being, with nuance and care for the other members of his family beyond what they're capable of doing. And that's a recurring theme in the film. The more cruel and random aspects of the world sort of encourage a return to a more optimistic and childlike worldview. Childlike not in a bad way, but, in the sense that the big man JC meant when he spoke unto his disciples. Wow. I'm like a I'm like a scripture writer. I'm so cool. Now let's talk about Grandpa. Grandpa is a hedonist, and what that means essentially, if you don't know, is all he really cares about is physical pleasure. And he'll do anything he can to get it. He's addicted to heroin. He got kicked out of his old nursing home because he's addicted to heroin. He overdoses later on heroin. At one point, he gives Dwayne, I believe, 15-year-old boy, the advice that the best thing he can do in life, the biggest mistake he can avoid, is only fucking one woman. And that what he must do is instead have sexual intercourse with a multiplicity of women. He is just a truly hedonistic, physical-oriented human being. And he's really funny. I really like him a lot. However, in his final scene before his overdose on heroin, he has a conversation with Olive in which she says she's worried about the competition because she doesn't think that she's beautiful. And he tells her very sweetly that she's the most beautiful girl in the whole world. And she says he's just saying that. And he tells her, no, no, no. I'm a incredibly selfish human being. And I'm telling you this because that's literally what I physically see. You don't have to worry about that. And it's weird and funny and sweet, in part because you can tell, he's saying that partially as a joke, as a reflection and introspection to his own, the flaws in his own worldview, or in his case, really lack thereof. It's sweet and touching and redemptive in a strange way. And that's good because he pretty much immediately dies after that scene. Now let's talk about Dwayne. Woo! Yeah! That's what I'm saying! Oh, Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. Dwayne is a nihilist, and he venerates the works of Friedrich Nietzsche, our good friend Friedrich Nietzsche, and is sort of taking his Übermensch philosophy to heart and just attempting to craft himself into the perfect human being he can to achieve his goal of being an Air Force pilot. And I want to talk about that for a second because that is fascinating. And this is a smart movie. So I know any commentary on this is intentional, and any contradictions are also intentional and meant to further that commentary. It is fascinating that he is both an adherent of Friedrich Nietzsche and wants to be an Air Force pilot, because Nietzsche was famously anti-government. Anarchists venerate his work about as much as nihilists and 14-year-olds on the internet. And so for him to want to be part of this government organization while simultaneously, again, idolizing Friedrich Nietzsche is fascinating. And I'd like to argue that despite his self-avowed nihilism, what he really is a depiction of a sort of flawed idealism. That's right. We're switching things around here. That's called a bait and switch. I made you think he was one thing, and now I'm informing you that I actually think he's another thing. This is cinema, guys. This is cinema. So let's look at his actual beliefs, or I guess his actions, because for about half of the movie, he doesn't talk a lot, and when he does talk, it's post-character development. He doesn't talk because he's trying to do a sort of vow of silence, a sort of spiritual thing before he accomplishes his goals. He wants to be an Air Force pilot, and looking at this guy, I don't really think he's pro-military. I don't really think he's like a centrist king. I don't think he's all big about the US government. I think he probably despises imperialism. Could just be that I like Paul Dano, but I think really the reason he wants that is because he wants to fly around in a plane and shoot people and be really cool. It's like a personal fulfillment thing. And he doesn't really care about the system at all, which you could view as nihilist, but really he's centering his entire life around one ideal. He hasn't spoken for months to achieve it. In a sense, he's as driven and ruthless and self-committed as Richard, the only exception being his ideals don't make him be a huge jerk who I want to hit. And also he's played by Paul Dano, so I don't care. But then in one of the film's signature scenes, as Olive is testing him, giving him an eye test, they find out he's colorblind, and he flips out, freaks out in the car. The car has to pull over. He runs out into the desert screaming like a lunatic. He yells at all of his family that he hates them, points out their flaws to them, generally just makes a big stink. And, well, then Olive is able to bring him back just by sitting by him and being there with him. And I'm getting choked up. I'm such a loser. But it's one of the sweetest scenes in cinema ever. Seriously, if you're still watching this at this point and you haven't seen the movie, I know that I was saying I related to you before, but I'm going to fight you in real life now. And so in him, again, we see this recurring theme of a character's ideals being absolutely shattered, their worldview proved moot, and a sort of positive regression to the state of optimism, again, facilitated by Olive and by her desire to just be happy, to just do good. That's the message of the movie, is yes, the world sucks a lot, but just be a good person regardless, you know? In a sense, that's more nihilistic than Dwayne ever was. It's not a movie that really looks at some big underlying meaning of humanity. It's a movie that just says, here's what we are, here's what we have, here's our resources, and here's what we can and should do for each other, just by virtue of being human. The mom gives us less to talk about, unfortunately, but she's still an excellently written character. She's really just a pragmatist. That's her worldview. She does whatever needs to be done to help her family and care for them. She kind of freaks out when it turns out they're taking this huge road trip and they're in financial ruin and things are terrible. But in the end, again, her love for Olive and her desire to see her succeed brings her back to the family like it does for everyone else. And Frank. Oh, Frank. Frank. Frank's life has fallen apart. He's the preeminent Proust scholar in either America or the world. I can't remember. And his runner-up, the second most preeminent Proust scholar in the world, is getting an award for being a genius instead of him, and also dating his ex-boyfriend, and also he lost his job because he was freaking out, and so he attempts suicide towards the beginning of the film and then is brought to live with the family. He's less brought closer by Olive, although him and Olive bonding is incredibly sweet. It's more Frank and Dwayne play off each other in a very interesting and I don't know, touching way. On his first night with the family, Dwayne writes on a sheet of paper, "Don't kill yourself tonight," and Frank agrees not to. And towards the end of the film, there's a very touching scene where the two of them speak together on a pier, and Frank talks about how Proust's life sucked. He was a dweeb. He was a loser. But Proust said something about how in his suffering he produced greater work, and things seemed to mean more. He was able to reflect on things more. He, just like all of the rest of the characters, is brought to this strange sort of half nihilism, half optimism that the film seems to be endorsing. I mean, at the end of the movie, these people's lives have fallen apart. Um, Beauty Queen can't beauty in the state of California anymore. The family's in financial ruin. They drive away in a Volkswagen for about the same amount of time it took them to get there, probably, in a car where the horn is just constantly going off. This wreckage of a car. And it's like, even despite that, they found each other and they've chosen each other. And even though the film ends off with them objectively worse off than they were in the beginning, in a realer sense, they're better off than they were before. And they're because they have each other, because they care about each other, and because they care about humanity as a greater whole. Maybe they're suffering individually, but as a group, they're brought together in this incredibly meaningful and interesting way. And the film argues that, you know, even though the world is a strange and often dreadful place, and even though there's all of these different worldviews, many of them self-serving, the best thing you can do is care for each other and care for yourself and try to bring as much happiness to yourself and other people as you can. And I think that's wonderful. And Olive. We've already spoken a lot about Olive through her relationships with other people, but she's just a sweet kid, you know. No, that comparison is stupid. Never mind. But she's the heart of the movie, and even though she definitely doesn't win the competition, she is she's the titular Little Miss Sunshine, not the competition. She brings everyone together, and unlike that sort of character in a lot of other media, she's allowed to have issues too, and to have up moments and down moments the way a human being does. But she still is this unrelenting force of optimism that drives the movie as a whole. So this movie made me cry, chat, like a lot. I think you can tell probably that I'm getting worked up talking about it now. But like, this movie made me cry a lot, bro. I don't know, man. This movie made me freak out. Um and that's what happened. Um it's just so rare, especially and I'm gonna sound like I'm old as balls and at CPAC right now. But I mean it, and I think if you read it in good faith, you'll understand what I'm saying. In the current climate of aggressive cynicism and pessimism, and cynical media where every third thing that comes out is a deconstruction of something, it's exceedingly rare and especially meaningful now to ever see a a work of media that is such an earnest and unironic. Even though this movie is a dark comedy and has a lot of dark moments in it, it is a unflinchingly touching and caring and compassionate um, plea, really, for optimism. This movie is just, you know, pleading the case for optimism, like Phoenix Wright in the philosophy court. That wasn't funny at all. Life sucks, but we have each other. And even though each other is a group of people that very often sucks as well, it's it's still nice to have them. And in the end, they will care for you. I mean, human beings are not a uniquely evil species the same way that a, a lot of people seem to be spreading right now. There are bad people, obviously, maybe even more bad people than there are good people, but in the end, if you're good to people, you'll find people who are good to you. And that's what this movie is saying. And even if you don't, even if everything does suck the way everything really does suck for Steve Carell, not God, not the actor, Frank, the character he's playing. Jesus, I'm not cutting that. That was funny. Even if everything does suck for you the way everything sucks for Frank and the way everything really does suck for Dwayne, I mean, it's kind of like I guess it's kind of melodramatic because like my dreams got quashed when I was in high school, but that is terrible. That is dreadful. He's built his life around something and he's realized that he doesn't have it. And honestly, again, I'm not going to talk too much about what happened to me because this isn't my trauma dump corner. The channel isn't called um June trauma dumps. I don't know. I don't You're going to learn very quickly watching me that I'm not very funny. Um I had built my entire life around something, and without that something, I just felt completely empty as a result of that. And maybe the reason, doing some introspection now, that's interesting. Maybe the reason this movie touched me the way it did is because what Dwayne seemed to be going through paralleled what I was going through, maybe not to the same degree, but in a similar way. And him choosing to have hope and him choosing to love the people around him, even the flawed people, to even love people who have wronged him, um, to just love regardless, inspired me and uplifted me in a way I didn't think I could be inspired in that moment, and a way I didn't think I could be uplifted in that moment. Movies are beautiful, man. Um, it's someone communicating an idea to you in the purest form. And I love this movie. If you're still watching this and you haven't seen it, I video's almost done, whatever. You can finish the video. But like go and watch it. I know I spoiled the whole thing for you. You're going to like it anyway. It's a good movie. If you don't sue me. Also, I hate you. Um that was a little intense. But yeah, that's about it for this video essay. I know it's pretty sloppy, this one. I'm not doing a lot of editing for it because I kind of just want to get it out there. I've been working on it like all week. And I know that's not even a long time, but I just kind of want to get it out. And my next project is going to be really long and take a really long time to do. It should be out sometime in October. But having said that, probably November now. It's a little Halloween thing for you. I found a tier list of disturbing albums on Rate Your Music, and I've been listening to all of them one at a time, whole thing. My rule is, even if I hate it, I can't stop. So, yay, I love my life. I love choosing to engage with things I dislike for content that like 5 people are gonna watch. Anyway, there's a lot of big name albums on there. There's Sinner Get Ready by Lingua Ignota, Soundtracks for the Blind by Swans, A Crow Looked at Me by Mount Eerie. God, that album. GR by Death Pile, which is my least favorite album ever. Watch that video to find out why. But there's some interesting ones I'd never heard of on there too. There's an album where every instrument in the entire album is handmade from human bone. There was a like depressive suicidal black metal band from Japan that played Funeral Doom 2, which is fantastic. Honestly, I'll just recommend that now. Go check out Endless Dismal Moan. Listen to the album Ruin. That'll be like your appetizer for the video to come. Anyway, love you guys. Love you, Juners. Mwah. And thanks for watching my video. I'll have more out like it later, and that should be interesting and fun. See you.